Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The call popped mid-laugh, then a man's breath filled our channel. Myra, mute, her whisper scraped the mic. Too late. Who is Atlas? His voice close, measured, cut through static. I froze with the cursor on disconnect, heart hammering hard. I'm Myra, 29, already bracing for fallout. On my monitor, our server flared, statuses blinking like warnings. Her avatar lit green, then crimson, then gone. Another window opened on my screen, camera flip his face. He held her device toward the laptop, knuckles bone white. Atlas is online, a statement, not a question. My icon pulsed, every keystroke felt loud and stupid. I killed the mic and typed 3 words: ghost, now run. A single dot replied, our emergency ping, then silence. Footsteps crossed tile on his side, quick and deliberate. He turned the camera again, hallway, front door, chain. I heard a thud, then her muffled oath, danger escalating. I dropped from the call and shut all overlays. A window showed his car across my street, empty, idling. He had followed patterns, her late shifts, my late status. I ducked as a knuckle tapped my door 3 times. Open up, calm, almost polite. The calm worried me. I slid to the peephole and saw nothing. Another knock, just 2, like a code learned by watching. I texted her plan C, then I pocketed fear. The peephole darkened, hand covering glass, breath close outside. Atlas, not a shout, just placed like a blade. My name wasn't safe here, not even the fake one. I latched the chain and counted exits, none clean. He called again, quiet, patient, using her tone almost perfectly. Please, the word wore her shape and wrong cadence. I pictured her crouched near a closet, holding air still. My palm hovered over 112, 1 more second. The Discord overlay flashed, new DM from her archive. Keys Planter 11, his screen recording of our plans. He wanted me to believe she sent it now. I didn't, she knew better than that bait. I cracked the door an inch, just wood and chain between. His eye met mine flat, assessing, no surprise there. He lifted her device slowly, camera faced my hallway. Talk to me, Atlas, he breathed like a runner. Wrong apartment, I let the words fall without flavor. He smiled with half his face, humorless, practiced, cold. Plan C means you, the paper in his hand rustled. I kept my gaze on his empty other hand. A siren sighed somewhere distant, then faded to nothing. He leaned closer, voice low and steady, trained control. You think this is a game with handles and secrets. My door trembled under his knuckles, 1, 2, pause. My phone buzzed once, unknown number, local, no message. I answered without words, breath only waiting for proof. A whisper came through, ragged, barely there, her. He's mirroring the TV, don't speak, move now. I shut the call and thumbed the silent alarm. Not for him to hear, only for me to act. I took the Go envelope taped under the shelf. He knocked again, 5 light taps like nails on glass. Come outside, he let the device dangle, recording everything. I kept the chain and opened just 1 notch wider. Step back, my voice surprised me, firm, already past fear. He didn't move, so I closed until metal kissed metal. I typed blind, screen tilted away from the peephole. Bodega rear, 20 steps, leave device if followed. Her reply appeared, 4 characters, no emoji, pure grit, I. A floorboard creaked in his car, someone else or nothing. He spoke through the door again, softer, almost kind. She lies to you, she lies to everyone, she lies. I let the sentence hang and watched for the tell. No tremor in the hand, no heat in the eyes. My lock camera pinged motion on the stairs, fast light. Not him, different weight, neighbor kid, risk to blow cover. I texted kid SDAIRS to her, she replied with weight. The footsteps paused like they smelled trouble, then retreated. He slid a folded printout under the door, careful, deliberate. Numbers, transfers, my alias on a scheduled move tomorrow. A trap or a mirror, either way it could wreck me. He waited as if patience was his favorite weapon. I was already choosing the next wrong thing on purpose. I unlocked the chain 1 notch, not enough for a grab. Leave the paper and step back 3 feet. He obeyed with a grin I wanted to break. I used the security wedge and opened for a reach. Snatched the paper and locked twice, fast, quiet, final. The print blood details I recognized but never shared. He knew enough to scorch us both if I flinched. The car door popped below, sharp, then silence like held breath. I scanned the numbers once, saw the alias, saw the hour. He had our timeline pinned but not the route switch. I messaged her one more pivot, under tunnel, no street. He pressed his forehead to the wood, warmth through grain. You won't walk this away, you're already in it. I felt the truth hit and rearrange my choices. I turned off every light and listened for his next move. I yanked the wedge and reversed the in one sweep. The paper slid under the rug as I moved past the frame. He leaned in to block me with that calm stare. I stepped hard on his shoe and turned the deadbolt fast. Back away, my hand never shook, which scared me more. He smiled like a teacher marking a test with confidence. This ends tonight. His breath warmed the gap like a warning. I locked the bottom latch and crossed to the fire door now. I punched the alarm bar and let it slam once. Noise ripped through the stairwell and sent echoes everywhere. He cursed behind the apartment door and fumbled metal. I took 3 steps down and vaulted to the mid-landing. Phone buzzing in my pocket, 1 vibration, then 2. Rear tunnel drop device if tailed, I typed without looking. A tiny checkmark blinked and held like a prayer. I pocketed the phone and heard his footsteps hit stairs. A neighbor opened a door and froze at the siren. Not now, I waved her back with a flat palm. She faded inside and slid a chain across the jamb. Boots scraped above me, controlled, steady, closing. I cut down 3 flights and skipped the last riser. The service corridor stank of bleach and last week's laundry. I followed the pipes left and counted doors by memory. 1 latch yielded to pressure, just enough for my shoulder. I squeezed through and ended behind the dumpsters. Air tasted like metal and rain and the city's throat. His car idled at the curb with lights off. A shadow shifted in the driver's seat like a watcher. I hugged the wall and checked line of sight. If he had a partner out front, we were boxed. I flipped my hood not as disguise but for warmth. The alley dog barked once and went silent like trained. A message pinged with a single letter and nothing else. She was moving, which meant he wasn't with her now. I texted a time and a count for pacing. If she missed the 3rd count, I would switch paths. Footsteps hit gravel behind me, too light for him. The kid from upstairs peeked around the bin and blinked twice. You okay? His voice cracked like a twig underfoot. I gave him cash and a task with no questions. Pull the lobby alarm and leave by the front. He nodded once and sprinted like a courier with purpose. 30 seconds later, the building howled like a training drill. My watcher flinched and glanced up at the wired windows. I booked it down the side passage past the old mural. The grate for the service crawl space sat loose on 1 hinge. I dropped to my knees and belly crawled under the lip. Dry dirt filled my hair and ears and patience. Above me, his boots stomped and then retreated toward the street. He liked control, not crawling, which gave me time. I elbowed through the dark and counted breaths with stubborn focus. My shoulder scraped concrete and left a thin, smarting line. I emerged by the recycling shed and crouched low. She waited by the fence with hands tight and empty. Eyes red, lips pressed, spine straight like a steel bar. No phone, she mouthed and lifted her chin toward the gate. We moved in sync along the fence like practiced thieves. The rear of the bodega glowed through slats like a target. A delivery van blocked half the alley like a blessing. We slipped through the gap and landed beside the pallets. Any tales? I whispered only once and watched her face. She shook her head and pointed at a distant camera. He mirrored our chat through the TV, she breathed tight. I nodded once and kept us low under the lens. The rear door was propped with a rubber wedge. Inside, the clerk counted scratch-offs and ignored everything ridiculous. I flashed 2 fingers and a look that meant emergency. He jerked his chin at the storeroom and looked away. We ducked behind the crates and finally took 1 breath. I used your handle for the transfers, she said flat. It's my money, but your tag keeps it hidden. The words weighed more than the paper burning my pocket. Proof exists, she pressed a folded slip into my palm. Her handwriting matched the bank document without room for doubt. I tucked it near my ribs and felt a little taller. We weren't innocent, but we were not what he wanted. Outside, tires hissed like a fuse running short. I pulled a cap low and checked the peephole slit. His sedan crawled past and paused at the overflowing gutter. He watched the back door like a fisherman with time. We can't leave through here, I kept my voice level. She nodded and pointed toward the freezer corridor. The rooftop ladder sat beyond it behind a chain. We needed cutters or a different kind of plan. The clerk reappeared and flicked his gaze to the mezzanine. A maintenance hatch waited above the soda stacks like a dare. No chain, no lock, just a lift and push. He tapped the counter twice as permission and turned away. We stacked 2 crates in a flat dolly-like steps. She braced the base while I climbed and pressed up. The hatch resisted, then gave with a sticky groan. I slid in and offered my arm. Eamon hauled hard. We lay there a second and listened for pursuit. Only the humming of compressors and the city's low growl. I closed the hatch with a rubber seal and a prayer. We crawled toward the ladder that led to the roof. From the dark came a tiny vibration under my chest. Her spare device rang once against the metal rib. She froze like a hit animal and then exhaled slow. We watched the screen light with his name and a promise. I crushed the power and pocketed it near the directive. We moved again, elbows scraping, knees sore, hearts disciplined. At the great wind pressed through and tasted like freedom. I checked the street again and saw blue lights rolling. Not for us yet, but close enough to change tactics. If officers reached the lobby first, he would perform innocence. We needed to present facts before his charm rewrote truth. I looked at her and nodded at the ladder. Decision time. Split or together, she wiped her eyes and waited. Together, the word felt right and dangerous in equal measure. We climbed to the roof and kept our bodies below sightlines. Across the block, 2 patrol cars glided toward our building. He would notice the pattern and pivot toward the rear. I pictured him circling, collecting fragments, building a scene that served him. We had one advantage left, and it wasn't speed. It was paperwork and bruises and that clipped recording. We crossed the rooftop and found the second exit hatch. It led to the bakery with a clean alley release. I loosened the latch and held my breath for a beat. If it squealed, we were cornered by sound and timing. It opened with a whisper and a final merciful click. We climbed down and locked it from the inside. Flour dust coated our clothes and made us look tired. We walked to the front door like customers planning pastries. On the sidewalk, I dialed the precinct and kept it simple. 2 names, 1 address, 1 ongoing pursuit with digital evidence. Send a unit to the rear as well. The dispatcher confirmed and asked us to wait. Visible risk accepted. She slid her sleeve back and showed the marks without flinching. No speech, no theatrics, just the facts on skin. I recorded 3 seconds on my phone and saved twice. We stood still behind the glass and watched the corner for movement. His sedan appeared slow and then stopped at a hydrant. He scanned the storefronts and skipped hours with a glance. He checked his mirrors and spoke into nothing with confidence. I caught my reflection and barely knew the steadier person. Blue washed the intersection and flooded the block with order. He lifted both hands on the wheel like a civic hero. We stepped outside before his charm reached full volume. I held up the directive and the dead handset like armor. He saw the items and understood the arc had bent. His jaw set and the tendon in his neck twitched once. He stayed polite, which told me he planned another route. I braced for that pivot even as sirens sealed the scene. An officer waved us forward with 2 fingers and a stare. We stepped to the curb and kept our hands visible. He asked for identification while the second unit boxed the sedan. I held my breath as the husband flashed a friendly nod. She's confused, I can help. He angled toward the nearest badge. His tone matched public meetings and charity nights with ease. I raised the directive and the dead device like anchors. The young cop clocked both and called a supervisor on speaker. The dispatcher confirmed our earlier call with a timestamp and note. The senior officer arrived and separated the conversation into lanes. I gave the clipped recording of his voice from the hallway. A hiss ran through his teeth when the sound played back. He pivoted fast and produced a printout from his coat. Financial fraud, he announced to the street-like theater. The senior took it and looked for signatures and routing. I watched the husband's foot tap once, then freeze midair. The clerk from the bakery stepped out with a tired gaze. He pointed to us and then to the rear exit hatch. Women came in scared, paid for nothing, left quietly. The senior wrote that down while the husband shaped disbelief. A chime rang from somewhere close and wrong. The spare device in my jacket buzzed with an alert tone. He had triggered a locator ping to draw eyes to me. I pulled it out and held it high like evidence. It was hidden in a vent, it is not mine. The clerk nodded fast and tapped his chest twice for truth. The young cop bagged it with practiced motions and minimal talk. The husband's jaw moved once like he bit down hard. Fresh units rolled up and blocked the intersection with methodical care. The senior scanned the printout and matched dates to our messages. He asked the husband where the screenshots came from originally. Family Cloud, the answer came smooth and quick and dangerous. Whose account? The senior did not blink or shift weight. Household account 2N. Eat 2 clean edges showed. The young cop asked for consent to check the mirroring settings. The husband hesitated just enough to raise heat around us. He tried a new angle with a short practice sigh. She planned to run with cash and a new identity. My fists wanted to answer, but my voice stayed even. She planned to survive, you planned to control the narrative. The senior asked for injury photos and live marks. She rolled her sleeve and lifted her collar with steady hands. The officer set a small ruler next to every dark outline. The lens captured silence that even he could not charm. A second phone appeared in the husband's pocket on a clip. The young cop caught the reflection and leaned in without warning. He removed it and opened a recent message thread with caution. I recognized the trap instantly, and my stomach tightened like wire. A fake handle matched mine with a 0 replacing the letter. The chat displayed crude invitations and midnight meetups and hotel receipts. None were ours, all were crafted to smear and distract. The senior's face hardened 3 degrees as he scrolled slowly. Tell me the creation date for this account. The husband shrugged and tried a bright, unbothered smile. The officer tapped audit logs and read the timestamp aloud. It was opened an hour after we ran from the building. The senior turned toward me and nodded once for patience. Walk me through your last 5 minutes before the bakery. I kept it crisp and left out anything not vital. He listened with stillness that made my chest unclench in increments. A private number called the precinct phone in the cruiser. The dispatcher put it through on the outdoor speaker by mistake. A voice demanded a welfare check for an unfaithful spouse immediately. The caller ID displayed the husband's business landline with extension. The young cop met the senior's eyes and then mine. They hung up and logged the misuse without commentary or flair. He saw the shift and tried righteous outrage on cue. You are protecting criminals, he threw toward the sidewalk watchers. A patrolwoman walked the perimeter and returned with a small pouch. She held it up with 2 fingers and a deliberate pause. Found near the hydrant under the sedan's back bumper. Inside sat a slim tracker with a magnet and a tag. The senior raised one brow and waited for a plausible answer. The husband looked skyward as if expecting assistance from air. He offered a story about company vehicles and safety protocols. The serial number had our apartment block in its registration. I remembered the kid from the stairwell and gulped down guilt. I gave the officer the name and apartment number quickly. Check if he was approached this week near the mailboxes. The patrolwoman trotted off and keyed the note into her tablet. My friend touched my wrist once and let go immediately. I felt how thin courage can be when you hold it. We stepped closer to the cruiser as invited by a glance. The senior lowered his voice just enough to land the message. You both come with us to file statements now. He turned to the husband and kept it clipped and cold. You remain here while we verify the tech and the injuries. The husband nodded, but his eyes moved past us toward the bakery. He motioned toward the clerk with a small pleading gesture. Did they pay for anything at all? Witness credibility matters. The clerk lifted the day's ledger and tapped a time-stamped entry. Coffee 2 cash. The page turned and sealed like a door. The patrolwoman returned with news that punched even harder. The upstairs kid reported a man offering him gift cards yesterday. The job was simple: pull a fire handle on a signal. The description matched the husband's jacket and watch without wiggle room. He reached for innocence again and found only thin air. His smile cracked around the edges and then reset bravely. Everyone is mistaken, emotions run high, I am worried. The senior lifted a hand and ended the performance with silence. We were guided into the back of the first cruiser. Not cuffed, not hidden, clear glass between us and him. He watched the door close and mouthed a promise without sound. I stared right back and let the promise bounce off. As we pulled away, the radio lit with a new call. The unit near my building reported a pride lock on my door. I felt ice wash my neck and settle under my tongue. He had a spare key or someone ready to plant something. The senior caught our faces in the mirror and nodded once. We will send a car to secure your place immediately. I breathed out and prepared for whatever scene waited upstairs. The road opened ahead while the past tried to claw back. The cruiser jerked right as dispatch pushed another alert through. Front door splintered at her place, the driver muttered without turning. I braced my knees and tasted copper under my tongue. We weren't heading to paperwork anymore, we were heading home under TH. Reet. Make it lights only, the supervisor tapped the dash twice. We cut against traffic and slid past the stalled bus. I glanced back, he watched from the curb with a mask. His eyes tracked us like he'd planned the next move already. We stopped hard, 2 uniforms sprinted up my stairwell. The third scanned the sidewalk for lookouts or a scout. I kept my hands visible and asked for gloves. I didn't want to touch whatever waited behind that door. The frame leaned inward like a bruised shoulder about to drop. A thin wedge held the gap, which meant tools. Hold the hall, the supervisor lifted a hand and listened. No movement inside, but the quiet felt staged and loud. We entered on a slow count with corners cleared. My sofa was tilted like someone searched under it fast. Drawers half open, not dumped, pointed to targeted placement. The rookie lifted a cushion and froze like he smelled a trap. A stack folder sat on the coffee table, too neat. My alias printed across the top in bold letters. Inside, hotel receipts and chat screenshots and a prepaid card. All fresh, all identical to the fake thread from the sedan. Photograph before you breathe on it, the supervisor kept it crisp. The rookie nodded and framed every page like a surgeon. I snapped my own 3 shots from my records. Not to fight them, just to fix my memory against spin. The kitchen faucet dripped once like a metronome for nerves. I crossed to the wall and checked the router lights. A new glow blinked under the cabinet where none belonged. The rookie crouched and pulled a thumb drive wrapped in tape. Bag that, the supervisor's voice lost patience for subtle games. He scanned the ceiling corners and spotted a pinhole lens. My stomach tightened, not from surprise but from confirmation. He had been building a story here since earlier tonight. Footsteps scuffed outside, a neighbor peered in, apologetic and pale. He offered to fix our mailbox last week, she whispered. He had a key blank for the whole stack. The supervisor took her number and sent her downstairs fast. My phone vibrated inside an evidence bag with a new ping. A bank notice showed another scheduled move for Dawn. Different amount, different memo, same alias in the field. He was multiplying fires while we chased hoses and smoke. Can you stop it? Her voice came quiet behind me. She stood at the threshold, hands tucked under her arms. The supervisor blocked her view of the staged pile. Only the account owner can lock a transfer in time. Then we go to a branch now, she stepped forward once. Or we call the after-hours number with the reference code. Her certainty steadied me more than my own breath. The supervisor weighed it, then jerked his chin toward the door. We moved as a unit back to the street. Radio traffic bounced names and crossed streets and patrol routes. The clerk from downstairs waved from the doorway like a lighthouse. We had witnesses, but witnesses bend when pressure leans hard. At the curb, a tow truck hooked his sedan's rear axle. He watched from across the street with a calm face. A woman I didn't recognize stood beside him, arms folded. She filmed us like a documentarian ready to upload rage. Who is she? The words slipped out before I planned them. Office manager, he announced to the air with offended dignity. The woman turned the camera to her own face and smirked. Tell them about the company vehicle policy and trackers. The supervisor ignored the bait and opened our cruiser door. We piled in while the rookies stayed to inventory. Dispatch patched through a bank fraud investigator on speaker. If you have the directive, I can freeze pending items. I do. I pressed it against the glass for the camera. The investigator asked for initials and 2 exact timestamps. I gave both, then added the alias in play. He exhaled like a man reaching a switch during a storm. Locked for 48 hours pending confirmation, he reported. Any other activity tries will bounce back with alerts. I thanked him and felt the first real inch of ground. The supervisor caught my eye and nodded once, keep going. We rolled toward the precinct while night pressed in. Ahead, lights pulsed over the station like a heartbeat. My throat tightened then steadied, this wasn't over. Winning one call doesn't end a long game. Inside, a tech met us with a handheld imager. She scanned the thumb drive and the staged folder quickly. Files copied within the last hour with admin metadata. She raised her brows at the timing like a flag. We entered an interview room with glass like a mirror. She sat beside me, shoulders set, voice still contained. A recorder chirped once as it started a new track. Tell it in order, but only what changed decisions. I kept it to actions and timestamps and verifiable pieces. The hallway knock, the emergency ping, the tunnel pivot. The bakery roof path and the spare device crawl. No flourish, just the steps that led to this room. Halfway through, a detective opened the door with a question. Do either of you use a desktop at her place? We shook our heads and waited for the turn. Because the living room computer just logged into Discord again. My chest went cold, we were both here and sealed. He was remote or someone else had our login details. The tech keyed something and pulled the IP trail up. A ping from the office network downtown arrived on screen. The supervisor called a unit to that address on the spot. He kept his tone neutral so no one could read him. I watched the path map build like a breadcrumb trail. Office, then cellular hotspot, then my building again 10 minutes later. The detective clicked the recorder off and leaned forward. Anything that connects him to that office network tonight. I thought of the woman with the camera and recall. Her badge strap, her habit of filming every interaction like habit. He's not alone, I said, and my voice didn't shake. He has help with infrastructure and plausible deniability. The supervisor listened and didn't blink at the word help. He knows these patterns, he's seen them unfold in other rooms. The constable stepped in and set a small tray down. Inside sat the tracker from the hydrant already opened. The serial mapped to a company inventory with recent updates. Last movement timestamp shows 20 minutes before the bakery call. The tech cross-referenced with the fake account creation time. Same window, she murmured as her fingers moved. She pulled a single thumbnail from the drive with care. A clip opened of my door from earlier today at noon. 2 hands entered the frame in thin gloves and placed the folder. No face, no voice, a wristwatch glinted then dipped out. The tech froze the frame and zoomed on the watch clasp. Brand and model clear enough to search among his photos. The supervisor left with the still and returned in minutes. He carried a print from the husband's business site gallery. Ribbon cutting, same watch, same clasp, same tiny scratch pattern. He set them side by side and let silence do weight. I didn't breathe for a beat because the quiet mattered. Her fingers curled on the table, then uncurled like a decision. We are filing for a protection order tonight, she said. It wasn't a plea, it was a step loaded with steel. We signed statements while the tech mirrored the devices. New pings popped from the office network as if mocking us. A patrol unit radioed in from downtown with a surprise. Office manager present, claims she is alone with authorization. The supervisor ordered a walkthrough and a preservation of logs. He told them to check the conference room screens first. Minutes later, the unit reported the TV stuck on a chat. A desktop logged into my handle with the 0 substitution. They photographed everything before anyone touched the mouse. In the corner, a small camera pointed at the screen. Live feed out to a streaming account created tonight. He was building an audience to witness a story that kept changing. The detective looked at me, you comfortable going on record now? Yes, my voice surprised me with a steadier tone. If he wants an audience, he can have one with dates. They rolled fresh tape and we walked it again with precision. Halfway through, she reached into her pocket and froze. A ring imprint shaped her palm, then flattened slowly. Keep going, she whispered, and her mouth trembled once. I kept the thread and didn't glance at her hand. The constable re-entered with a new piece of evidence. A hotel keycard found under my couch during the search. Date stamp from last week and tied to his name. He had brought his lies into my home to seed doubt. The supervisor deployed that word carefully into the room. Staging, short, final, it framed everything we'd found tonight. It also meant motive and method were locked together. He would pivot to outrage when this angle closed. A phone buzzed against the glass like a trapped bee. The clerk from the bakery had left a voicemail with context. He remembered the sedan circling twice before we arrived. He remembered a second voice from the passenger seat coaching. The unit at the office called back with an update. They found a binder of employee schedules near the server rack. Our names weren't there, her shifts were though with highlights. Someone practiced the timing like a sport they planned to win. The tech handed me a tablet to sign a release. She looked at me like a teammate after a hard quarter. You both need rest when this clears the first hurdle. I nodded, but the night had more turns in it. Dispatch announced a domestic call 2 blocks from the bakery. Male subject pounding on a door and shouting about thieves. The address matched the clerk's apartment above the shop. He wasn't done with us, he was threatening our witness now. The supervisor shifted gears without ceremony or speeches. 2 cars with me, one stays on evidence and logs. We stood, my legs ached like I had run a marathon. He stood straighter than me, and that sparked courage. We reached the intersection as a bottle shattered in the gutter. The clerk leaned out a window with a phone in hand. The man below hurled curses and waved an envelope around. He claimed it proved we were extorting business owners for cash. The patrol unit flanked him and moved the crowd back. The envelope tore as he yanked it from his coat. Receipts spilled, none with our names, all conveniently messy. The supervisor collected the scraps and read 2 lines aloud. They were from a convenience store across town near the office. Time matched the fake account creation down to the minute. I felt anger heat my neck, then narrow into focus. His web wasn't smart, it was just fast and loud. They cuffed the man after he shoved a bystander into a bike. He shouted about conspiracies and corrupt cops and government plots. None of it helped him against the assault charge on camera. The clerk ducked away and held his door with shaking hands. We walked him to the cruiser and he kept yelling. He named the husband as a mentor and community leader. He bragged about volunteers who owed him favors and rides. He promised more people would come to show the truth. Inside the station again, the tech met us with news. The office manager's laptop contained draft posts about our case. Anonymous accounts were ready to publish with cropped screenshots. She had a calendar of scheduled posts starting at sunrise. The supervisor read, then made a quick call-up chain. A press officer arrived with a notepad and a map. We preempt with facts at dawn with evidence images. I watched her print the stills with the watch clasp. The detective turned to us with a low, steady question. Do you want to be named or remain initials only? My friend looked at me with glassy eyes and resolve. Initials now, full later when this doesn't cost lives. I agreed without drama and signed the forms with care. The room felt less like a trap and more like ground. I let my shoulders drop an inch and breathed with intent. Hope isn't a plan, but it fuels the next step. Just then, a slow clap echoed from the lobby. He had walked in voluntarily with a lawyer. And a grinned. He wore a fresh jacket and a civic pin gleaming. He looked like a poster for community awards and good deeds. The lawyer asked for immediate interviews with equal time. The supervisor refused and cited ongoing evidence collection. They shifted to a complaint about harassment and bias. The press officer recorded it without engaging the bait. He glanced at us through the window and placed 2 fingers on glass. A salute or a promise or simple arrogance under lights. My pulse jumped but my spine held, I didn't flinch. He didn't get the reaction he came to harvest. The tech printed the watch still and slid it across. The lawyer stopped grinning long enough to weigh risk and optics. He leaned to whisper and the grin dimmed 2 shades. They asked to postpone their heroic speech until morning. We were escorted to a quiet waiting room with water. The supervisor stood in the doorway like a sentinel. Transport to a safe place in 20 minutes, he said. Then you sleep and we work the morning strategy. I stared at my hands and saw tremor fade slowly. He touched my shoulder once, then withdrew as if burned. I did not think we'd make it this far tonight. We did, I answered, and the words settled like a stake. A final radio burst cut through any comfort we had. Unit at the office reported a fire alarm tripped on level 2. No smoke, just a pull and a jammed exit bar. He wanted eyes pulled from the real board and back to noise. The supervisor dispatched a team and stayed with us. He had learned the rhythm of our opponent's moves already. Create chaos, force split attention, rewrite the story in gaps. We would not give him those gaps again. The press officer returned with a draft release for dawn. It listed times and locations and material evidence titles. No names, no drama, just steps the public could follow. It would blunt the smear before it grew teeth. We stood to leave when a desk phone rang sharp. The bank investigator had one more note for the file. Someone tried to cancel the freeze using a burner line. The code phrase was wrong by 1 letter on purpose. He was losing detail and clinging to speed and pressure. That gave me air and something like power underfoot. I realized I wasn't hiding anymore, I was choosing moves. We walked toward the exit and into a cold, awake city. A patrol car waited to take us to a safe address. I looked back once through the glass and caught his stare. He lifted his chin like a gambler down to the last chip. I lifted mine higher and prepared for the next round. The patrol unit rolled to a stop outside the safe address. The driver scanned the block with a quick chin lift. Inside and stay near the back door, his tone clipped. I stepped out and felt the street watching like a lens. We crossed the threshold and locked 2 points without talking. A wall phone rang with a code from the watch commander. Judge is awake, protective order in 20 minutes. I exhaled once, then listened again for footsteps outside. She opened the Go folder and flattened the directive. Bank will call back with an authentication phrase. We rehearsed the phrase twice like a drill under fire. My heart steadied into a beat I could use. A low knock rattled the frame in 3 measured taps. The patrolwoman checked the peephole and signaled safe with 2 fingers. Legal aid stepped in with a tablet and a badge lanyard. We file electronically right now, then print at court. I signed with a stylus and kept my hand firm. She signed with a quick flourish, jaw tight, eyes forward. The paralegal uploaded photos and attached the watch still. Judge wants a live attestation in 5 minutes. We shifted to the landline and waited for the connection. A crisp voice confirmed the docket and asked 6 questions. Immediate risk, yes. Recent stalking behavior, yes. Mutual contact routes, severed. Weapons present, unknown. Order granted for 72 hours pending hearing. We stood frozen until the printer spat the stamped order. Legal aid slipped copies into plastic sleeves and zipped them. Service starts as soon as he's handed one. I felt a thin heat rise behind my eyes and stop. Dispatch broke in with a new twist from downtown. The office manager had entered the building with a contractor. They were moving boxes into a storage cage near servers. Units rolled with cameras and a property clerk in tow. My phone rang with the bank code on schedule. A new voice verified our lock and read back references. Attempted overrides from 2 separate lines in last hour. Do you approve a hard freeze for 72 hours? Do it. My mouth went dry but my voice held. Alerts only to the secondary contact per the directive. A notification popped with the freeze confirmation and an ID. We took a screenshot and saved it twice on separate drives. A shadow moved under the window and set my nerves humming. The patrolwoman pressed a finger to her lips and listened. She drew the curtain back a sliver and watched the sidewalk. A rideshare idled with hazard lights pulsing like a lure. Legal aid packed up and pointed to the back exit. We rotate addresses if that car stays parked. The driver typed the plate into the in-car terminal. Registered to his company, assigned to a temp detail. I felt rage bite my tongue, then sharpen into resolve. He outsourced surveillance. The words tasted like tin and truth. The patrolwoman called it in with a short factual burst. 2 units rolled to tag and tow for violations. The dispatcher patched the watch commander back onto our line. He arrived with counsel again. He wants his devices returned. Denied, the commander answered himself before we could react. Also, the office manager is now requesting her own statement. Let her talk but record every second, I said. No one argued, which told me my instincts had earned weight. We pivoted to our own records before sunrise hit feeds. Screenshots, timestamps, the crawling path under the hatch, all of it. A new message flashed on my laptop from a burner handle. Atlas exploited a vulnerable spouse for money, it read. Then a thread of edited screenshots appeared in a private channel. The edits were clumsy if you knew where to look. I opened the developer panel and pulled the image metadata. Creation date mismatched the chat's supposed timeline by hours. I pinged the analyst at the station with the hash. She replied with a checkmark and a thumb that promised movement. The rideshare outside pulled away and circled the block slowly. We shut the interior lights and shifted deeper into the unit. The patrolwoman posted near the back with her hand on radio. Judge wants you downtown for fingerprints in 1 hour. We moved with backpacks only and left nothing personal behind. The cruiser took side streets and skirted early commuters. My shoulders unclenched once we slipped into the precinct lane. I wasn't safe, but I wasn't on his turf. Inside, the analyst waved us over to a console. Got the hash, found the source on a staging server. Last login from the office manager's laptop 15 minutes ago. She tapped a key and froze the external share. The public information officer handed us a printed briefing. Releases hit at 8 with redacted names and clips. We include the watch still and the office IP map. My lungs filled like I could finally complete a breath. We rolled fingerprints fast and gave standard photographs. I kept my chin level and let the lens do work. She stared into the camera like it owed her respect. The technician nodded once as if she saw the thing turning. A deputy entered with a sealed envelope and gloved hands. Inside lay the temporary order with embossed seals. He walked it to the service team like passing a relay. Find him and deliver before he moves locations again. The analyst flagged a pattern on the map with a pen. Pings triangulated around 3 coffee shops with strong Wi-Fi. He was hopping networks and using captive portals to diffuse logs. We would catch him when he stopped to enjoy his audience. My stomach cramped with the first drop of hunger. She pressed a granola bar into my palm without speaking. I chewed and felt human again for 30 seconds. Then the world tilted with a new alert from records. Anonymous tip just named Atlas as an abusive predator. The complaint cited dates matching our safe room hours. The desk sergeant rolled his eyes and stapled it shut. Filed logged, also useless against verified alibis. We gave a short presser to 2 assigned reporters. No names, no places, only the investigation sequence and protections. They nodded like professionals and asked 2 clean questions. I answered with care and kept the words narrow and sharp. A rumor started on a neighborhood board 20 minutes later. 2 women faked injuries for attention, the post screamed. The analyst tracked the first poster to an office IP. Not him, her, the manager, then 3 sock accounts piled on. I leaned over the console and set my jaw in place. Preserve everything, capture the moderator IDs and take down timestamps. She smiled grimly like a goalie who saw the shot. Screens flickered as she locked a copy for later court. Uniforms returned with news of the service attempt downtown. He'd skipped one office and switched to a co-working space. They left the order with the building manager anyway. The clock started the moment he touched his own mail. The bank investigator called again with a weirder update. Someone authorized a merchant refund to your alias in cash. That meant a pickup attempt in person within 2 hours. We could intercept at the counter and document the handoff. The watch commander approved a sting with 2 plainclothes. We were not bait, we were eyes with distance and cover. The storefront sat 3 blocks from the office manager's building. She would not resist watching the scene unfold in real time. We parked across the street with coffees we did not drink. The plainclothes officer took a place at the back table. The clerk counted drawers and pretended to fill out forms. A bell rang as a man in a courier jacket entered. Not him, a runner, he placed a code on the counter. The clerk glanced at our unit and stalled for a copy. The runner checked his watch, then pulled out his phone. A text arrived on my screen from a new number. Cute trap, it read, try faster. The courier pocketed the phone and headed for the door. The plainclothes officer swept his leg and pinned him gently. A small chip reader skittered across the floor like a bug. We seized the device and opened the back cover carefully. A prepaid SIM lay underneath with contacts labeled by initials. We recognized 2 of them from the office staff list. The ring wasn't big, but it was enough for leverage. Patrol cars appeared and the store returned to board normalcy. We slipped away before gawkers turned the scene into gossip. My hands trembled again, not with fear but with adrenaline. I breathed out and fixed my eyes on the next hour. Back at the precinct, counsel met us with thick folders. Emergency hearing at 10, she said, tapping her watch lightly. Judge wants to know about the burner SIM and chip. We laid it out in order with photographs and logs. A clerk poked her head in with a message from records. The staged folder from my apartment had 1 fingerprint partial. It matched a volunteer from his nonprofit with prior petty theft. The volunteer lived 3 doors from the office manager. We moved to the courtroom annex through a side entrance. A dozen people waited with tired faces and clipped conversations. Our case was called third after a landlord fight and a bar scuffle. We walked to the front and stood behind the rail. Counsel spoke in short bursts with 0 theater and maximum weight. The judge read the watch still and tilted his head once. He scanned the IP timeline and tapped the 0 handle. He turned to the bailiff and asked for the officer logs. Opposing counsel arrived late with a silk tie and a smirk. He carried a stack of affidavits that smelled like overnight printing. Victims of rumor campaigns by these women, he announced boldly. The judge raised a palm and cut the noise without effort. Put them on the table, opposing can review after this ruling. He looked back at us and asked 1 clean question. Do you fear immediate retaliation if this order lapses? I met his eyes and let the truth land. Yes, my voice did not waver and my shoulders stayed square. He has used others to break into homes and plant items. He has mirrored devices and staged records to spread lies. The judge nodded once and wrote without looking up. Order extended 14 days with no contact and distance. Violations result in immediate custody pending further proceedings. Opposing counsel opened his mouth, then shut it with a swallow. We were walked out under the gaze of strangers and relief. On the steps, the press officer raised a hand for calm. We will answer 2 questions, she announced to the cluster. A blogger shouted about Discord like it was a scandal. I stepped up and kept my words like a blade. Discord is a tool, it is not a crime. Screenshots can be edited and voices can be faked. We provided logs and locations to law enforcement today. Cameras clicked like insects hungry for a stumble. A new car pulled to the curb with tinted windows. The door opened and the office manager climbed out slowly. She waved to the cameras and smiled for her audience. Then she turned and walked straight toward us with confidence. Care to apologize on camera? She asked with a bright face. Counsel stepped between us and handed her the extended order. You are included by name, counsel added without heat. The manager's smile cracked at the edges and fell. She stepped back and reached for her phone in a hurry. 2 officers moved in with minimal fuss and maximum clarity. You are served, leave the line and clear the steps. She withdrew, breathing hard through her nose, eyes burning. We returned inside before tempers found a new angle. The analyst waved us down from across the bullpen. Streaming account just uploaded a live countdown, she said. 15 minutes to a leak of your private messages. Pull it, I said, though I knew we needed more. Mirror the stream before takedown, capture viewer count and chat. She nodded and split her screen like a conductor. A link opened with a pulsing timer and a chat flood. Messages poured in with threats and opportunistic jokes. The countdown ticked to 8 while moderators pushed slogans. The analyst grabbed admin IDs and server names in rapid shots. Public Information drafted a new post with stepwise debunking. At 3 minutes, the stream flashed a folder icon and froze. Then it switched to a blue screen and a login prompt. The analyst smiled because she'd already flagged the stolen token. The stream crashed under its own bad credentials and vanished. A notification hit the watch commander's screen 2 seconds later. Attempted access on seized media from unauthorized location. Coordinates pointed to the co-working space near the courthouse. Units peeled off in a convoy that meant patience had run out. We stayed put and did not chase the action. That might have been the hardest choice of the day. I drank water for the first time with slow focus. I let my pulse drop back into a rhythm I recognized. The door flew open and a detective whispered in triumph. Caught someone at a shared desk with a USB in hand. Not him, the nonprofit volunteer with the matching partial. Laptop shows admin access to the staging server. He turned to leave, then looked back with one more detail. The volunteer wore a watch with the same broken clasp. Your still just became a chain, not an island. I caught the table edge with my fingers and held fast. We waited for the paperwork to catch up to the facts. The impatience tasted like metal and old gym air. Counsel reviewed the next steps without sugar or doom. Hearings, discovery, forensic reports, future depositions, real accountability. A final message arrived on my phone with no caller ID. Atlas, you're playing above your level, the text warned. I stared at it until anger cooled into something sharper. I saved the screenshot and forwarded it to the analyst. We were escorted to a different safe location for the afternoon. Windows high locks checked, patrol routes known by heart. I sank into a chair and let the shaking pass. Across from me, she stood taller than the morning version. We changed our names in our heads tonight, she murmured. Not to hide, to choose how we're called going forward. I nodded because the thought clicked something true inside. I wasn't just running, I was learning to stand and aim. Before dusk, the watch commander briefed us one final time. Charges for the volunteer, probation questions for the office manager. A meeting request from a prosecutor who hated smear campaigns. And a note that the husband had finally been served. He left the courthouse through a side door with his jaw set. He looked smaller without the crowd in the borrowed spotlight. I watched from across the street and refused to look away. He met my eyes and turned to smoke, at least for tonight. The knock came before sunrise, 3 quick than when held. Uniforms filled the doorway with focused eyes and clipped motions. Warrant just signed for the shared workspace. I grabbed my pack and felt my pulse settle into purpose. We rolled out with lights low and engines quiet. Two cars peeled off to watch the side exits. I watched my reflection in the window and saw resolve. I wasn't hiding anymore, and that changed the footing. At the co-working lobby, the manager fumbled a keycard. He stalled, then recognized the paperwork and stepped aside. We climbed as a unit and stopped at a glass door. Inside, a figure hunched over a monitor and didn't turn. The volunteer stared at code like it could bless him. A cable hung from the tower to a pocket recorder. He glanced up and smiled like a kid playing spy games. Streaming again, the tech muttered, already moving in. Plainclothes blocked the hallway and eased him from the chair. A second desk sat warm with two tabs open. The staging server login blinked for a password refresh. The tech inserted a right blocker and started imaging without ceremony. A chat window flashed on the second monitor for a breath. Upload in 60, it read along with a short URL. The tech mirrored the session and traced the path quickly. The source pointed to a storage bucket tied to a card. The card belonged to the manager's department under a slush budget. Invoices listed community outreach with tidy monthly charges. The officer following the money whistled under his breath once. Patterns fall apart when daylight walks in with a clipboard. We bagged the recorder and 2 key fobs from the desk. A duffel under the table held 6 prepaid phones. Each had stickers with letters that matched staff initials. The chain wasn't big, but it reached plenty of doors. The volunteer chuckled as cuffs clicked and then sagged. Someone told me it was civic work, he offered weakly. The tech logged the remark and did not answer him. He looked at me and found nothing he could move. Downstairs, the watch commander stepped out of a sedan. Process here, don't spook the others, he advised calmly. 2 officers disappeared into the suite with evidence labels. We stayed back and let procedure do the heavy lifting. My phone buzzed with a direct message from an unknown profile. Meet me at the courthouse steps now, it read. A dot followed, then another like a taunt. I showed the screen and waited for the call. Trap, the patrolman mouthed, but her eyes burned alert. The commander nodded and switched to a different line. Controlled contact on our terms, public space, cameras already set. A plan formed faster than my fear could catch up. We drove to the courthouse with 2 cars as cover. Media lingered at the base, bored and hungry for movement. He stood at the top landing with a careful smile. His lawyer hovered nearby, whispering into a recorder. He lifted a document like an offering to the crowd. Statement of integrity, he announced to whoever listened. I felt the heat rise, then flattened it with breath. I walked forward until the microphones tilted toward me. You asked for me, I said, hands visible and steady. He nodded with practiced sorrow and a damp voice. You're destroying reputations with edited screens and fear. He tried to hand me his paper like it absolved him. I didn't touch it, I pointed at the officer's camera. Show them the time stamp from the office network. The press officer lifted a still, then another, then the clasp. Gasps rippled through the stairwell like pebbles hitting water. His lawyer stepped between us with polished outrage. Character assassination, he announced, wrist twitching toward the press. The commander raised the temporary order without a speech. You've been served, step back 12 yards or face custody. He retreated exactly 11, then smiled in defiance. You can't outrun what people believe, he muttered toward me. I didn't take the bait, I turned to the crowd. Belief isn't evidence, we brought evidence, I answered and held. A deputy approached from the side with a small tablet. She displayed a live feed of the co-working seizure. The volunteer appeared in cuffs with the recorder swinging. A murmur rolled over the steps and changed the air. He felt the shift and threw a fresh storyline fast. Conspirators planted devices to frame a community leader. Every word hit like a dull drum with no rhythm. We let the noise collapse against photographs and logs. The judge's clerk opened the heavy door and leaned out. Protective order hearing in 10, she announced to everyone. We filed through while he held the steps as a stage. A reporter called his name and he forced another smile. Inside, counsel set down a folder and tapped her pen twice. Keep it linear, she whispered, no coddling, just rails. The judge entered and scanned our faces without warmth. He lifted the file and turned to the court reporter. We testified in pieces that locked together like clean joints. The bank freeze with codes, the tracker serial, the hatch crawl. The watch clasp in the office log in with the zero swap. Nothing extra, nothing that could be spun into fog. Opposing counsel waved affidavits like he might turn the tide. The judge read 2 lines and placed them aside. Unsigned, dismissed, he intoned, eyes on the clock. Opposing stiffened, then began a speech he couldn't finish. The bailiff's radio crackled with an update from records. Background check flagged a protective order violation last year. Not for him, for the volunteer with the recorder. The room absorbed the detail and shifted its weight. The judge extended our order with firm strokes. He added a line about third-party interference under direction. Opposing tried to object, then thought better and sat down. The gavel didn't bang, the silence did it better. We exited through a side hallway and paused under a vent. I wanted to cry, but my body chose movement. She pressed her forehead to the wall and breathed once. "We aren't running, we're driving this now," she said, conviction steady. On the street, the manager paced by the curb with phones. 2 detectives approached from opposite angles with open palms. Conversation voluntary, one offered, voice even, stance ready. She glanced at counsel and started talking without a smile. Assignments came by group chat, she admitted in short bursts. Uploads scheduled with countdowns to pressure you into mistakes. She described the fake handles, the zero, the routing. Each detail clipped a wire he thought we couldn't reach. The commander logged her words and marked 2 names. Not mine, not hers, additional helpers in the shadows. One drove the company car from the bakery night. The other approved invoices under the outreach budget. Sirens swelled 3 streets away and then softened. A separate unit grabbed the driver near a gas station. He had keys to the company cage and a burner. His pockets carried 8 receipts for hotspot cards like confetti. We followed the unit back to the precinct for the last push. The analyst opened a matrix of accounts on the wall. Red lines showed token use, blue lines mapped upload attempts. The center cluster pulsed with the office network's ID. She clicked one bubble and brought up a silent clip. My door again, gloved hands, the folder placed with care. Then a reflection in the glossy table for half a second. A face warped by angle but recognizable if you knew him. The room didn't cheer, it held its breath. The tech enhanced just enough to reframe the jawline cleanly. "Contact the prosecutor," the commander ordered, shoulders like iron. We had crossed from defense into offense without tripping alarms. I stepped into the hallway and let my knees shake. A janitor pushed a cart past and nodded like a witness. Ordinary life kept rolling, which felt strangely brave. I swallowed and walked back, ready for whatever came next. Counsel met us with a short, hard plan for tonight. Secure housing for 48, minimal digital contact, direct lines only. Close the Discord server after a final archival grab. Rename your handle as symbolic closure, not to hide. I logged in and pulled a complete export with timestamps. The archive zipped into a package and saved to evidence. I hovered over the delete button and felt my chest tight. That server carried laughter and panic, and the moment everything changed. She placed her hand on mine and nodded once. We didn't need it to tell the truth anymore. I closed the server and watched the icon fade to gray. The silence afterward sounded like room to build something new. Counsel handed me a card with a single direct number. "Call if he blinks wrong," she said, eyes unblinking. I tucked it with the directive like a match set. Tools, not talismans, ready for the next swing. The press officer beckoned from the doorway with a careful gesture. "One last update for the record before evening." We stood beside her while cameras aligned like birds. She read the fact sheet with times and object names. The reporter asked the question I had feared all week. Why use secret accounts at all? No accusation, just steal. I let the pause work, then gave the only true answer. Because open channels got watched by someone who punished honesty. The microphones dipped and rose as if they understood. Another asked if I regretted the alias that drew fire. I looked at the courthouse and thought of the hatch crawl. "I regret waiting to act, not choosing shelter," I said and meant it. We left through the side lot into a darker street. The safe ride idled with a quiet engine and open door. I watched the courthouse glare shrink in the rear window. I let my shoulders drop and felt the evening breathe. Halfway to the new address, a car fell in behind us. Not close, not fast, just present like a hand on the back. The patrolwoman checked the mirror and tightened her grip on the wheel. "Hold," she murmured and tapped her radio twice for company. 2 blocks later, a squad car slid between us like a shield. The tail drifted off and turned down a side road. I felt adrenaline rise and then ebb like a tide. Fear still lived inside. But it didn't drive. At the apartment, an officer walked us through the locks. He showed the peephole cover and the bolt positions. He left his number on the counter and made eye contact. Call, don't wait, don't play brave for strangers, he instructed in 10 heavy. We set bags down and stood with our backs to the wall. No speeches, no pep talk, just steady air shared between us. She peeled away the tape on her wrist and winced once. I held ice to the swelling while the city idled outside. My phone vibrated with a final ping from the analyst. Warrant issued for him based on the reflection clip. They were moving to pick him up at his club. My knees went weak and then solid in the same breath. I walked to the window and looked without letting him in. Headlights swept by and kept going like trains on schedule. Inside, plates clicked softly as she set them down. We ate in silence and tasted ordinary like a new language. The watch commander called with a measured voice and no triumph. In custody, calm, waiting for counsel, we proceed overnight. I thanked him and ended the call with hands that finally steadied. The room felt bigger, not safer yet, but bigger. She reached across the table and curled her fingers around mine. We didn't marry it with words because words can wobble. We sat with the truth we had written under pressure. We had not been perfect, we had been exact when it counted. I opened my laptop and created a new handle. Not Atlas, not anything mythic or reckless or loud. Just a small name that sounded like privacy and spine. I hit confirm and felt the floor meet my feet. Before sleep, I walked the hallway and checked every lock twice. Not paranoia, practice, discipline that keeps you breathing tomorrow. I paused by the door and listened for footsteps that never came. The quiet held steady like a promise I would verify at dawn. My phone buzzed one last time with a short note. From the prosecutor, you did the right things in order. The sentence landed softer than any comfort from friends. I turned off the screen and let the darkness stay earned. In bed, the ceiling looked like a map of choices. Some wrong, some brave, all leading to a narrow road forward. I let my lungs pace me into something near rest. Morning would bring hearings and statements and more truth to nail down. I slept with my shoes near the door by design. I woke to no alarms and no fists against wood. We brewed coffee like soldiers not at war anymore. Then we opened the door today, alert for the next test.